Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Good day to you, Brad Trinago.
Good day to you. A lot going on. We've got the winter and spring sports obviously in progress, and we've even got a little bit of fall sports coverage for you on this week's pod.
Well, yeah, we will hear from a couple of the Mizzou football players that you know and love. A couple of returners join us on the podcast this week in just a moment. But first, we will remind you that our friends at Shelter Insurance power the pod. They are ranked number one in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 6 of the last 7 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter. And Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like Huli Huli Chicken, Luau Pig, and the delectable Dole Soft Serve. Hawaiian Bros is just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order at hawaiianbros.com.
We've moved away from the blizzard-like conditions towards stuff it's not quite, Hawaii level in terms of weather, but very nice out there, and it's timed out well in terms of spring football practices, trying to get those in and be outside while you do it.
I feel like Coach Drinkwitz didn't start things quite as early as he had in the past. There have been years where he wanted everybody out of there by the time spring break rolled around. A little bit later, which means, I guess, a little bit nicer weather, we got a chance to talk outside with a couple of Mizzou returners who you certainly would know from their exploits, even most recently in the Tigers bowl game in the Music City Bowl against Iowa. One of them being, of course, the Houston area native Marquise Johnson, and the other one being the Kansas City area native, the Tigers kicker Blake Craig, who had his first full season. So I think it's just neat that, if we're talking about developing skill, why not ask these two individuals to hone their skill of 5 minutes of conversation with us? I think that's a very worthwhile cause for their time this time of year.
Certainly works out well for us. So yeah, well, let's go with that it helps them. But I'll tell you what, two huge pieces of that Music City Bowl win. If you'll recall, a couple of months ago, Johnson had a terrific game, more than 120 yards receiving and a touchdown, and of course Blake Craig a couple of monster field goals down the stretch to give Mizzou the differential and the win.
Yeah, let's not waste any more time, since I know that you, Brad, were itching to ask Marquise Johnson about just how it was. He went ham in that bowl game in Nashville. Here is Brad with the aforementioned Tiger wide receiver, Marquise Johnson.
Happy to be joined by a 5'11 junior wideout from Dickinson, Texas, Marquise Johnson, with us on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. Marquise, let's go back to the most recent game, I guess. The Music City Bowl had a really solid performance there, 7 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. What was your favorite memory from that game?
Favorite memory was just winning. Being able to be there and win with my guys, for my seniors, for my dogs that left, Brady, Theo, Luther. Being able to just win that game and go home with W was what really mattered.
You mentioned winning, and you're 21-5 so far as a Tiger, so you're off to a heck of a start there. And we knew from pretty much the day you stepped on campus, you have the ability to go up and get that deep ball. What have you been working on, I guess, throughout your sophomore year? What did you work on to really round out your game as a wide receiver?
Honestly, I just worked on my route running and being emotional consistent. Some days I'm off in practice, make sure I just got to mature and keep going and keep striding.
Your first career reception went for 42 yards in that last-second win against K-State in 2023. Was that a moment for you where you felt like, yeah, I really belong at this level?
Man, that was a great moment. A lot of things going through my mind at that moment. First catch in my career. It was just a blessing. My family was there. Mom was there. It was just a great time.
And then skip ahead to the end of that season, that big 50-yard reception in the Cotton Bowl to get the offense going in the second half. Walk us through that play from your perspective.
Man, do that play, as you can see, Luther come in motion. It was just, I just knew it was there. I just knew I got to go make a play for my team, and we got to go get this W.
You mentioned Luther Burden when he hit him with that LeBron James celebration after the touchdown. What was your reaction to that?
That was cold, man. That was nice. I liked it.
We're talking with Marquise Johnson here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. What did you learn from Luther Burden and Theo Weiss and some of the veteran wide receivers who have been here the last couple of years?
I just learned how to play a game, really how to take care of your body, how to really manage this game and make it be successful. I learned that from Theo and Luther. They was my right-hand guys. Missed them. I hope they're doing well. I hope they do everything they say they're going to do.
Well, then it's time, next man up, and there's some folks like you and Joshua Manning and others who have been here, and then there are some newcomers that folks are really excited about. I think about a guy like a Kevin Coleman or some others. In terms of the new blood at the wide receiver room, what should folks know about them?
And you should know that they crazy. Just watch, just see it. You're going to see yourself. They crazy.
Yeah, really excited to see them too. Going back to I guess your high school days, what was it that led you to choose Mizzou? I mean, obviously your dad, Marquise Johnson, was a defensive back here. Was that the main factor, or was there something else that popped out for you?
It was nothing with my dad. I just love the city. I love being here. I love the city of Columbia. I love the coaching. I have one of the greatest receiver coaches to all do it of all time, as you can see his resume. And I just feel like this is a great place for me.
How much do you feel like you've grown under Coach Peeler in the last couple of years as a wideout?
I mean, I've grown really, really well from my beginning to where I am now. I still have things to improve, but it's still things to come.
Spring practice is where we're talking to you now. How have spring practices this year gone so far?
Spring practice has been going well. I've been working on my craft, just making sure I focus on things I need to get better and focus on things I need to do to make sure I'm the most complete wideout I can be.
The buzzword around with the coaching staff anyway at this time of year is individual player development. Can you go a little bit more into what it is you're working on, the little things, I guess, to make sure you're ready to go as a junior?
Little things like we can start from class, going to class, waking up on time. You can start from making your bed and begin when you wake up. It's just little things that just make a player different than the other people.
What are you focusing on academically right now? What's your major?
My major is sports business management.
What's the goal? Obviously, the goal is to continue playing football for as long as you can, but whenever that is done for you, what are going to be some of your goals?
Some goals I want to be an agent. After this is all said and done, I want to be an agent for just stick with football. That's really the main thing. Just make sure I stick with football. That's my love, my passion.
I think you still got several years on the field still to come here. Do you feel like now that you've moved into your junior year, do you feel like a little bit more of a leadership role with the wide receivers and with the whole team at this point?
I feel like more leader. I just feel like I have more responsibilities as I am. I'm not no freshman or sophomore anymore. It's time that I grow up and I got to do things differently.
And I know it's still early in the process here, and some of your teammates aren't even, on campus yet, but what do you feel like are going to be some of the keys whenever the games do start to count in August? What are going to be some of the keys for this team to be successful?
Just stand together, not giving up, and when we're down, keep fighting with each other, keep going with each other, and just keep playing and have fun with it.
Dickinson, Texas. What should I know about Dickinson, Texas?
It's a great place. You should go visit.
Where do I eat if I go to Dickinson, Texas?
Oh, you can eat anywhere. It's Dickinson. You got Lake City, Houston. You can eat anywhere. It's everywhere good.
All right. So is it brisket since it's Texas, or what? Is it barbecue or Mexican, or what are we looking at?
You can go find some barbecue. You can find a little bit of everything in Texas.
All right. I'm getting hungry, so we'll wrap it up here. Marquise, thanks a lot for your time.
No problem.
Marquise Johnson.
I kind of feel like he was playing coy with you on the food, though.
He
didn't want to give you the spot.
Right. Well, I had a chance to go down to Austin, and the line at the barbecue place I wound up going to can famously get quite long. So maybe that was where his concern was.
I feel like it's beef rib. I actually had a really good beef rib one time. My friend lived in Houston and drove across town to come pick me up on a layover at Hobby Airport. We went to Pearland, and I think the place is called Colleen's there, and I just got one is all you need. One beef rib, please. And yes, it was massive. And yes, it was delicious, and that was probably the best Texas barbecue I've had so far.
Well, that in my Texas barbecue experience, I got a brisket and a smaller rib situation, and I thought the ribs were better than the brisket too. I mean, everybody in Texas always talks brisket, but yeah, don't sleep on the ribs either, I guess.
Yes, I would suggest trying it next time. I mean, it is like a mild brontosaurus situation there, but if you've seen the Flintstones, you can handle it. And we also, of course, had our conversation with someone who would know a thing or two about barbecue, although we didn't really get there with him because kicking is so interesting. And my question, Brad, was just you kick a spheroid instead of an ovaloid. I don't know if that's what it's called. I went to college a long time ago.
I've looked that up. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, but in any case, Blake Craig grew up kicking a different type of ball, and then football came to the fore, and the Tigers are really glad that it did. So here's 5 good minutes between us and Blake Craig. Speaking with a Kansas City native and a member of the Mizzou football team here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast, and that is Blake Craig, the Tigers kicker. Well, you had a season last year that I know you would remember fondly and a lot of Tiger fans would remember fondly. How did you feel that first year and that full-time role as the place kicker went for you and for your team?
Obviously, there's room for improvement. That's the first thing I will say, and I think definitely looking back on it, great season. Obviously, we know we can do better as a whole team, and I think that's kind of our goal this year is to just want to know every day improve. So
Your number is 19. Tiger fans might say your number is 56. You hit a pair of 56-yarders. That's tied, for the fourth longest field goal in Mizzou history. When you were stepping up to one at Boston College and then one, obviously, at the end of the season that was real important against Iowa, how do you even begin to approach something that is that distance?
I think it's 100% comes down to your training, and that's what I do. I try to trust my training, and like I said in the Music City Bowl post-game conference, I said that I just black out when I kick. So, and that's true. I go out there and I just completely trust my training, and I don't really think, line it up, aim. Obviously, I have like a checklist I go through when I get set up, but other than that, you just got to trust yourself.
Let's go back to when you were growing up. What was growing up in Kansas City like? Were you always involved with football, or were there other sports that kind of took up your time?
Yeah, so I actually grew up playing soccer since I was like 3 years old. Didn't even touch a football until I was a freshman in high school. So played for the high school soccer team my freshman year, and coaches were looking for a kicker, and I was really bad to start with, but I kind of had that natural knack for it. So
when did you become a better kicker on the football field than a soccer player?
So I made that decision after my junior year to quit club soccer, but I quit high school soccer after my freshman year just to kind of, because the same season, gets in the way a little bit. But definitely my junior year, I had a really good year, and I was like, this is something that I want to pursue full time. So,
talking with Tiger kicker Blake Craig here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. When someone first said, kick this instead of the round ball, did you ask them, where do I have to hit it? Like, how does that learning process go, and how does the skill translate?
So I always had a big leg kind of growing up playing soccer, and I was just like, it's a weird shaped ball. How are you supposed to approach this? And my coach just kind of said, like, obviously all the basics, open foot, different things like that. But it was definitely a learning curve, I'll say that. So you have to approach hitting a football way different than hitting a soccer ball. I think if I went back and kicked a soccer ball now, it would not look very pretty. So,
well, it's all about skill development, right? Yeah. We're here at spring practices, which Coach Drinkwitz has said time and again is about skill development. You already know how to kick a football a long way. How do you develop your skills when it comes to the workouts that you and your teammates are having right now?
So my goal this spring is obviously be as consistent as possible, and I think doing that through obviously lifting is one thing, but being out here on the field, just being super detailed in my approach, like steps, all that, keeping my head down through the ball. As a team, everybody's focused on their individual player development, of course. So I think that's the emphasis, obviously, is for this spring is that. So
is kicking a thing in which the best thing you can do is to do it over and over and over again until you start to succeed?
I definitely think it's one of those things that it's a learning curve. You get really good, you have a dip, you get better, and then it's kind of like that roller coaster effect, and then eventually you just keep improving. So, yep.
And probably, handle your nerves too. How important is the mental game to what you do?
It's obviously very important. That's something that I work on every day is my mental approach, but the coaches do a really good job of putting me in situations where I can thrive in that, deal with pressure situations and hard situations. So, yeah.
Let's say there's a day that you have in Columbia or even back home in Kansas City. You have nothing to do. What are you going to do with that day, Blake?
You know what? Probably play some golf.
Really?
Yep.
You got a handicap?
I actually don't know my handicap. I shoot around low 90s, high 80s, though.
That's fine. You're doing better than the people on the podcast usually, so you're taking care of things. When it comes to this season and what lies ahead, what would be the number one thing you'd hope for your team to achieve this year?
Obviously, we want to go to the playoffs, but that's not our goal. It is our goal, but we want to be 1-0 every day and improve every day. That's kind of like our mindset. We have to build the brotherhood. There's obviously a lot of new players, so that's another thing that we're focused on, and obviously everyone's bought in. So I'm really excited.
There's a lot of time between now and kickoff, but it's good time spent certainly for Mizzou football and Tiger kicker Blake Craig, who joins us on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. Continued success to you and your teammates, Blake. Can't wait to see what the season has in store, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like huli huli chicken, luau pig, and the delectable Dole soft serve. Hawaiian Bros, just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order at hawaiianbros.com. All right, since you were left waiting in rapt attention, producer Andrew Bristow has solved
the message for us. A football is a truncated isohedron.
Huge
which
stuff.
is very important to know. And now you can go tell your friends that after listening to this podcast, and we will feel very well accomplished because Andrew Bristow knows exactly what we need at the time we need it.
That's why he's the ace producer that he is. It was important to have him on to talk about that. But, in terms of the two guys that we talked to, I mean, Craig, obviously, in his kicking role, he had some clutch moments. He had a couple kicks I'm sure he'd also like back as the season went along, but trying to just continue to build on that consistency piece. I really appreciated, listening in on your conversation, how open he was about, hey, acknowledging the fact that it's not going to be a linear, growth process as a kicker. You're going to take a couple steps forward, you're going to take a step back, and then you got to have that resiliency to continue to take steps forward after you face setbacks. And I think we saw that, in the Music City Bowl, that, he had at times an up and down year, but man, when the chips were down in the final game of the season, did he deliver and ended up being one of the differences in the win. So that was really exciting to see from Craig. For Marquise Johnson, that freshman year, it seemed like the one route he ran was, bleep it, Marquise down there somewhere. That was like the one route. But
it's a good route.
It's a really good route, and it's definitely a route that should continue to be as part of his tree. I would say for sure. But, sophomore year, it really did. There were definitely spots throughout the season, and again, in the Music City Bowl where he performed so well, where I was like, that was a route. That was the thing. That was not just run straight down the field and we'll throw it to you. I mean, he clearly is developing, and that's what it's all about at the college level, right? I mean, you come in as a freshman, and you're not going to be perfect. Everything's not going to come to you, but you continue to develop and grow as a player. And I think we're seeing that progress, and I'm excited to see what his junior year looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. In both cases, names that we would figure will factor in heavily to the proceedings in 2025 when we get there to the fall, of course. So I'm looking forward to seeing what both of them can do. And again, thank them both very much for spending a little bit of time with us. Of course, there is much more that is happening right now inside Mizzou Athletics, and the podcast requires that we cover just about all of it. So we'll do that. But first, you should hear a word from our friends at Shelter Insurance.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
And the podcast is also powered by Socket. Socket Fiber is now available. It is the fastest, most reliable internet combined with local service and simple billing. Contact Socket today for voice data and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET3 or visit socket.net. And Sophia's and Addison's restaurants. They're great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, the famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
I think I would give Nachos Bianco a higher overall score than what Mizzou Gymnastics just posted on Sunday, but I got to be honest with you, it's close.
Well, I feel like you're maybe selling gymnastics a little bit short there.
That's what I'm saying. It's
the nachos
close.
Maybe they don't measure up.
Nachos are really, really good. I mean, but is it a 10? Is it a 9.95? Like 9.75? Like
Yeah.
where does it land there? And it's
Were there enough points on the plate of Nachos Bianco for it to gain the maximum, or did you have to deduct for not enough grabbable points?
That's a good point. I've never actually made the Nachos Bianco myself. So if it's
well, you have to know what you're doing and what you're looking at
Yeah.
first to be able to judge it. Right?
Is it an easy dish to make? Because maybe like a 10 isn't even possible for a Nachos Bianco. You know what I mean? Because the degree of difficulty is not
there is a lot of heaping going on
high
there.
enough. But I mean, it is delightful.
Again, if you've not tried the Nachos Bianco, start small and work your way up. That's all I'll suggest. And hey, work your way up is what Mizzou Gymnastics has done throughout the course of this season. And then it finally came together in the way that I think we had kind of been alluding to throughout the course of the season we thought might be possible at the end of this year. They did it. They finally got that 198 score and did it at home on their senior day and took care of that Auburn team pretty handily. 198-1 to 197-15. Not like 197-15 is a really poor score, but 198-1 is a type of score that only 5 teams have put out in the country this season. Missouri, the 5th team to have a 198 plus in an individual meet. There were nearly 4,000 there to see it. The Tigers go undefeated at home. There's so many cool things that you can talk about. But again, it's tying the best vault rotation of the season to start things off. The second best score in program history on the bars. On beam, its best score of the season at a 4.945, which is really, really difficult to get. And then a 4.97 on floor, which ties the second best score. How does a 4.97, how is that only the second best score? That's how good this team has been this year. But all 4 things finally came together in one meet, and you see the results. A result that can put you where the Tigers would want to be, which is on the second night of competition in Fort Worth, the final session where you're one of the top 4 teams. That's where they could be when this is all said and done, if they're able to put together meets like that over the next few turns.
Yeah, it's kind of what you dream of as a fan also, but also as a coach, is that it just feels like this program is they've steadily gotten better, almost meet to meet. They've been incrementally just improving their score, and now it gets to the point where you're talking about posting scores in the 198. So I mean, it's a really exciting time around Mizzou gymnastics. Still 7th in the country in the last Road to Nationals rankings that came out, and individually, Jocelyn Moore throws up 995s on 2 different disciplines, on the bars and the floor. Marati Tarsoli with a 995, not a huge surprise. We've seen that from her before. Amari Celestine, the all-around star, 39.65 and in her all-around performance. That included a 9.975 on the floor. So just some sensational stuff all around from the Tigers, and they'll wrap up the regular season on Friday at 16th ranked Arkansas. Just continue to try to build those scores up, and again, like you said, the goal right now, again, the top 8 make it to the national championships, if you will, and then the final 4 get that opportunity to actually go for the title on the final night of the season, and Mizzou's in that conversation right now, man. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it very much is, and I feel like it is well earned and well-deserved from this team, and it finally has shown up. Like, it's not that Auburn is a program, again, they're 13th in the country, but you're amongst the very best when you're in this SEC, and to see such a stark difference on that day, I think tells me that Missouri really was firing on all cylinders and earned every bit of that 198. We weren't in like some sort of crazy overscored situation, it was a home score, but it clearly shows that the top end is there when everything comes together in a meet. And congratulations to Coach Welker. It's been a long time. I'm sure if you compared the average score from Shannon Welker's first couple of seasons to the last couple of seasons, you would see the market improvement, and they would outstrip by far whatever perceived acceleration of scoring there has been in the sport over his time in Columbia. It has been a phenomenal job, and now they're among the nation's best. And again, something like that proves it.
Yeah, I remember this wasn't that long ago that we were talking, I think even on this podcast, just in the last handful of years, about, whoa, Mizzou got past the 197 barrier consistently. Like, that was a really big deal. And now we're talking about 198s proving to be the ceiling. And like you said, only 5 teams all season have been able to post a score like Mizzou has. So it's definitely an exciting time around that program.
Yeah, 100%. And so we'll see where it goes with the Hogs, and then that was previously, like a high score for the team against Arkansas. So maybe they can do one better and just leave it in that battle line rivalry. I guess call it the battle beam rivalry. See, all right.
It's
I give them out for free sometimes. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way, are in order to a Missouri Tiger that when this is all said and done, I think because of the struggles of the past couple of seasons from a team standpoint, Keegan O'Toole risks not being appreciated in the manner he should be appreciated amongst the all-time great athletes at the University of Missouri. But here's a guy who missed 2 months out of the season, basically, and came back and said, all right, I'm going to wrestle it one last time at home and then go to the Big 12s. And he took on a very, very solid wrestler in the championship round, and Dean Habity of Oklahoma State went down early, and in O'Toole fashion, he knows exactly what to do. He is a Big 12 champion, and wrestling out of weight class, I mean, wrestling weight classes up from where he started. Just, he continues to be the top of the top, and he gives Missouri another year with an individual conference champion I think they've been doing it since the 2020-2021 campaign. It just is remarkable to see his development. He's a 4-time conference champ as well, which is very hard to do. I know that the Tiger wrestling team writ large did not have the type of upstart weekend that maybe they would have hoped to have, but they did get 3 qualifiers for the NCAA tournament locked up in terms of earning the allocations from the Big 12. Cade Moore got his at 133. Cam Steed at 165 dropped his match to the wrestler from West Virginia in the final. And, of course, Keegan is the 174-pound champion. And maybe importantly for him in his quest for another national title, he won't likely have to face Hamity or the best on the other side. He may be the number 1 seed, which would split him up from the hardest competition until the very end of a national tournament run, which I know things can happen a lot between now and then, but he did what he had to do to give himself the shot at that top seed, which I do think he deserves.
When you mentioned the conference championship, and that was pretty dramatic too. It goes to overtime, and right at basically a wrestling's equivalent of the buzzer to be able to get that done for O'Toole at 174. So congratulations to him. Cam Steed entered the 165-pound bracket as the 5 seed, makes it all the way to the championship, and loses a very respectable 2-0 decision. So I mean, he was right there. Congratulations to the redshirt sophomore, as he goes on to his first NCAA trip, and it'll be the second NCAA appearance for Cade Moore. He entered the 133-pound bracket as the 8th seed. He finishes 4th. So some overachieving mixed in there with, overall, not where Mizzou has been, an 8th place finish at Big 12s, but still at least 3 moving on to the NCAAs. As we're recording this, we don't know how many at-large bids that Mizzou is going to get, but that's also a possibility there. And, we'll see how things look in Philadelphia when nationals roll around later in the month.
Absolutely. Crazy to me that Philadelphia, feels like it hasn't been out east in quite a while, the championships.
It's a fighting city, from what I've been told.
Well, that's true. It is a fighting city, and you'll have a lot of that combat sports juice going on. And everybody will be taking pictures at the Rocky Steps, like everybody probably who's there for it. And I just can't wait for them to get back to St. Louis. That's just me. I think that Kansas City's great, but I think St. Louis has a little extra buzz when they got that wrestling tournament going on in St. Louis. Let's think. Well, there's basketball going on. We know that the run is over for the women's team, and now the search is on for the next leader of the program. I don't think that you have any inside information, Brad, so I won't put you on the spot for it. But to hear what Athletic Director Laird Veach had to say, he wants someone who is proven. He doesn't want someone who has not built before in terms of at the Division I level. And I think that indicates that Missouri is going to be, fishing in a small pond with some other pretty well-regarded programs in terms of trying to locate their next women's basketball coach.
Like Laird Veach, I will be going dark for the remainder of this process. The difference is that Laird Veach knows who's going to be the next coach, and I know nothing. So, yes. But with that being said, we are both going to be going dark. No, I have no idea either. But, it was certainly noteworthy to hear what Laird Veach had to say about the process, and we'll see how it goes. It's an interesting time, right? Where on the women's side, we haven't had this for 15 years, but there's the possibility that we could find out tomorrow. There's the possibility that the next Mizzou women's basketball coach is currently busy getting ready for an NCAA tournament appearance, perhaps. So maybe it's a couple weeks before we find out who that coach is. But the transfer portal opens on Tuesday the 24th, which is the day after the first and second rounds of the NCAA women's tournament wrap up. So if Mizzou's next women's basketball coach is eliminated, after those first 2 rounds, then I think we could see a hire come pretty quickly after certain teams are eliminated. But that's just me again speculating there. And either way, I'm excited to see what the next steps are for the program.
Yeah, logic certainly holds that, and so we'll just see how it goes. As we're recording this on a Tuesday noontime, by the way, so don't get mad at us if something happens and then you heard this after. Like, that's the nature of podcasting. I think we all understand this by now, and we can all be friendly about it.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants. Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants are great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, their famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
On the men's side, hey, listen, it was another difficult morning into afternoon for Mizzou men's basketball. And Brad, you were there. I feel like this Tiger team showed something in being able to gallantly fight back from what became a pretty early deficit against the Kentucky Wildcats. But with that being said, they still fell short. And so now you take a look after a defeat to end your season and dropping your last couple of games of the season. 91-83 was the final. Got it to within 5 in the second half. People are looking at you, especially on the defensive end right now, and saying, where are the answers coming from? I think that Dennis Gates has demurred when it comes to that and said, well, fouls are playing into it, and also being a team that is hunted instead of being the hunter might be playing into it as well. I don't think it's anything that we couldn't look back on in 2 weeks and say, well, that was silly that we were worrying about that. Like, we've seen this team prove what its top end is. We've seen that can beat anybody in the country. It hasn't beaten some teams that maybe you'd like to have beaten and help solidify your seed in the big dance. But a lot of things in the SEC turn on a dime. And I think about this with the Diamond Sports seasons, and I think about it with this men's basketball season. If you went and you won 3 and 4 games in Nashville, you'll be feeling on top of the universe all of a sudden, even if you had worries about how the last 4 or 5 games of the season played out. It's just the nature of this thing that the competition you beat can leave you feeling really good really quickly.
Well, you mentioned the defense, and it's weird to say after a game you lose 91-83 at home against Kentucky on Saturday, but I saw some encouraging things from the defense. If you go back and look at that game a little more, Kentucky only scored 10 points in the first 10 minutes of the game, and that's a very good offense. There
was a lot of foul shooting happening at the end.
A lot of foul shots at the end, and Kentucky hit their free throws. Mizzou was fouling to try and catch back up, and they were also taking quick shots on offense to try and catch back up. So that played into it a little bit, but it was the offense that took a little bit of a step backward in that game. Again, weird to say in a game where you score 83, but shot just 35% in the first half. Didn't take advantage of that slow Kentucky start as much as you would have hoped. Mm-hmm. Mark Mitchell was terrific, 22 points and 7 rebounds. A Lexington, Kentucky native, Marquise Warwick, balled out. He scored 17 off the bench, and he was a big reason why Mizzou, was down 16 early in the second half, got it down to a 5-point game a couple times, and I think Warwick was the primary driver of that comeback. So encouraging to see Warwick, heading into the postseason, what that could look like. Had a chance to talk with special assistant to the head coach, David Dickey Nutt, during the wrap-up show, like you typically do. I was subbing in for you there, and he talked a lot. First of all, he said the message in the locker room was, hey, let's celebrate what we have accomplished here. Yeah, the end of the season was not great, but to have a winning record in maybe the best conference in the history of college basketball, the SEC this year, to go 10-8 there, to win 21 games overall, you beat your arch rival to the West. Again, 10 SEC wins, a couple of them, that tremendous win on the road at Florida, Alabama at home, were just, electric performances where you had to dig deep in the clutch and come away with plays. So, at the broad scope of things, a very successful season, especially after you went winless in the SEC a year ago. Another message was, hey, now we get a chance to kind of take a breath. At that point, it's going to be, 5 days between games. Take a reset here and kind of start over with a new season. And there's still everything on the table for this team. And we've seen before in the annals of college basketball, teams that kind of skid to the finish of the regular season and then turn it around. For example, let's go, kind of way back in the archives of college hoops, all the way back to 2024. NC State lost its last 4 regular season games, entered the ACC tournament 17-14 overall, 9-11 in a pretty mid-league that year, to be honest. Won 5 games in 5 days to win the conference championship, and then they won 4 more in a row to get all the way to the Final Four. This Mizzou team is, way better than what that NC State team was. And so, again, it certainly doesn't feel great right now, the way that the team has performed the last 5 games or so, but there's plenty of evidence throughout the history of March Madness that you can end the regular season on a downer and all of a sudden be cutting down nets just a couple of weeks later.
I wouldn't even go that far. I'd say ask the Fightin' Blue Hens of the University of Delaware. you seen that story?
They're 12 seed, right? Yeah.
Delaware, 12th in the conference. They lost a ton of league games. And then they're running through their conference tournament, and they're playing in the Colonial Championship against UNC Wilmington. So a 16-19 team faces off against a 26-7 team, and guess what? Only one of those teams is going to go to the NCAA tournament, and it may well be the Fightin' Blue Hens. Like, that's just what happens this time of year. Form can come and go. I think it's more important that you see the best form at the right time and that you have seen the best form at some time previously. And Missouri has satisfied the first part of that. They've beaten Alabama any which way you could. They've hung close with all of their tight games. They won that game on the road at Florida that has aged wonderfully. You think about all those performances and say, well, that's what we know the top end can be. And then all you have to ask is, can you please give the top end 6 times in a row when they line you up in this bracket? And that is entirely within the realm of possibility for this team. So we just now get to see if it happens. And the accomplishments that have happened before give hope if you're really being honest about it. And I think that's part of why Coach Nutt would say we made sure to celebrate this. Like, that's what gives you the hope that says, here's the proof of concept. Now all you got to go do is do it. Do it 2 times a weekend, then do it 2 times next week and twice the weekend after that. And it's that easy. Right?
That easy. Yeah. Sounds like a plan to me. So first things first, SEC tournament. As we're recording this, we don't know who Mizzou's going to play off the bat, but it'll be either Mississippi State or LSU Thursday at 6 in Nashville. And if the Tigers win that, then it'll be Friday at 6 in Nashville against Florida in the quarterfinals, and we'll see what happens from there. Congratulations. SEC awards announced this week. Caleb Grill, the conference 6th man of the year. Mark Mitchell made 3rd team All-SEC, and then, of course, you've got, Robinson, who was named SEC All-Defensive Team. So congratulations to all 3 of them for those well-deserved awards, I think.
Yeah, 100%. All of them well-earned and well-deserved, and we'll see what this group can do. Coach Gates called it a special group, so special groups do special things. They already have. There could be more to come.
And I would say, too, the Senior Day ceremonies were really poignant post-game. Coach Gates got, he broke down in the middle of a message he was delivering to the crowd, thanking this group of players, and they all ended up kind of huddling up around him near the end. And so I think there were some moments there that you don't typically see. There's another moment, too, that wasn't talked about quite as much that kind of speaks to the relationship and the bond that I think Coach Gates has with, at least some players on this roster. So Tamar Bates walks out, and, among his group of family is his beautiful little daughter, who's 2, I think, at this point, or in that range, and she immediately, so she walks directly to Coach Gates at center court, and Coach Gates is talking to Tamar and some of the other family members, and the Leilani is just sitting there, and she's like knee high to Coach Gates, and she's like tugging on his pant leg and just sitting there. It's like, hello, why aren't you picking me up? Yeah, you always pick me up right now. And so eventually, Coach picks her up. But, that's a type of bond, as someone who's had a couple of 2-year-olds, like, that's not necessarily a common thing. Like, you've got to build up that kind of relationship to get a 2-year-old to just walk over and be like, why aren't you picking me up right now? What's the holdup, Coach? Let's get going here. Let's go. I understand the game didn't go the way you wanted, but, first things first, right? But those were some nice moments, near the end of the game. And, this is a group that has really invested, and it's shown with the overall performance this season, and hopefully things get back on track with the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And back on track, I think, is the word to use for the Diamonds right now. Mizzou softball went on the road. Some tight games, but dropped all 3 at Kentucky. There's still a lot of softball left to play in that league. And, yeah, the Tigers have struggled a little bit. They've struggled to keep the ball in the yard, to keep the runs down from the opponents. Those things come and go, and you can find real heaters in the sport of softball, and you can get real dominant really quickly in the center circle as well. So we'll see how that goes, and I think for Mizzou baseball, the story is kind of the same. It's finding a little bit on the hill, which the Tigers did in relief on Sunday, but unfortunately dropped a run or a curfewed game, a travel curfewed game to Binghamton. They had another series split where they won the doubleheader on Saturday, but they dropped Friday and Sunday. I will say that performance on Friday nights is something that Missouri is going to need to improve to give themselves the best chance to go to the places they want to go in the Southeastern Conference. Now, that task is very difficult when you're facing the Friday night starter of, say, the LSU Tigers, who are Missouri's next opponent. but the offense has been somewhat consistent throughout the course of the season. In fact, the game with probably the least consistent offense that we've seen in terms of just a hits and base runner standpoint is probably that final game on Sunday where, again, you did have the clock to think of in the back of your mind, and Binghamton put up an early lead. This team feels like it can probably go out there and give you 8 to 12 knocks per game, can get you some free passes, and you're going to need to find ways to convert that into enough runs to win the contest. Right now, it might need to be a little bit higher numbers. Some of the pitching is still rounding into form, but I thought the starting pitching throughout the weekend, it was pretty solid all the way around. Caden Jacoby kind of had a setback on Sunday, but Ian Losey deserved to win the ball game the way that he pitched, and I know he gave up 5 earned runs, but some of that happened with guys inherited by the bullpen beyond him. Will Libbert clearly has worked into a much more confident role for this team. Brock Lucas came on in relief and looked great, which was big time. That's something this team desperately needed over the course of the weekend. And I think he came on in relief of Caden Drew, who wasn't his best, but still was able to get guys out and give you about 5 innings of work. So the games will compress over the course of a weekend. There's no midweek game scheduled this week for Mizzou baseball, no midweek game next week. So I think that can help them, again, to kind of right the ship and maybe get everything lined up in a way that they prefer. And, the softball side, that opener against Illinois, we don't know the result. It's going to happen in a little bit from the time we have this podcast. And then the Tigers will be at home for that invitational, which will really be the first up-close and personal look for Tiger fans in mid-Missouri to have with this team.
Yeah, I think that, from a baseball perspective, you just got to hope for bad weather on Friday nights, right? Baseball's been great. And these Saturday doubleheaders, man, they've been doing an awesome job in those.
I don't wish doubleheaders on me, Brad. Don't do that to me.
You got to suck it up for the program, all right? They're crushing it in doubleheaders right now. And, so anyway. But, yes, so that's baseball. And then, back to softball. Got swept against Kentucky on the road, a top 25 team. Duh, they're in the SEC. Julia Crenshaw had a couple leadoff homers, a couple multi-hit games. Taylor Ebbs, who's actually a Kentucky transfer, hit a 3-run homer on Saturday in Mizzou's closest loss. That was a 5-4 final. The first home games are the Mizzou Invitational Thursday against South Dakota State and Princeton in the afternoon and evening, Michigan on Friday, Quinnipiac on Saturday. Then there's the makeup against Kansas City on Sunday afternoon, and then the Illini.
I skipped ahead to that Illinois game a week.
Yeah, the Illini are Tuesday of next week, and then you got a series against Oklahoma starting the following Friday. So there's still a lot of opportunities, like you mentioned. I mean, it's a crazy hard league. So obviously there are some negatives that go along with that. The positive is if you have a good series and you're able to post up a result or two against the Sooners, then you are 100% back in any national conversation. So the chances are there.
I would suggest if Mizzou fans want to head out to that softball series that they probably keep their eyes peeled and get tickets the moment they see them, because you can't really get them right now.
I was going to say,
and if there are any that are going to leak, if there are any that are going to leak out, who knows when it's going to be. So just you got to keep your eyes peeled and be sharp on those, because that's a hot ticket right now against the Sooners.
Absolutely. I've got my golden ticket. I'm going to utilize that, my all sports pass for a member of the media, and I'll be utilizing that probably coming up that weekend.
Yeah. We know not the results everywhere, but best of luck in the zone diving championships to the Mizzou divers all across in Iowa City. Indoor championships in the NCAAs are this weekend for track and field, and there will be some Tigers who have a shot to maybe bring home a podium and some hardware from that event.
Yeah, that's in Virginia Beach, Virginia, starting Thursday. Going back to swim and dive, like you mentioned, that's in progress as we're recording it. We do know that freshman Megan Jolly on the women's side and junior Collier Dyer on the men's side have advanced to nationals in the 3-meter and the 1-meter, respectively. So congratulations to them on that. The women's NCAA swimming championships, by the way, are coming up the 19th through the 22nd. The men are the week after that. Federal Way, Washington, which I learned it's a Seattle suburb down to the south.
Oh, okay.
In between Seattle and Tacoma.
I might have been through Federal Way and not realized it at some point.
There you go.
That's kind of where the airport. I think that's like where the airport is there. SeaTac Airport. Whatever. That. Okay. We're not geography experts. We just talk about sports here. All right. I know you've been waiting a long time to talk about this because it's going to start on Sunday the 16th. What can you tell us about the great General Hackler, whoever General Hackler is, for this men's golf tournament that's going to be played bearing General Hackler's name in Myrtle Beach.
Well, I feel like we should close with that, so I do want to mention women's tennis. They dropped a couple against Oklahoma and Arkansas on the road last weekend, and they've got a couple of doozies against top 10 competition coming up this week in Columbia. Number 3 Texas A&M Friday afternoon, number 9 Texas on Sunday afternoon. So
how do they get those two to do the same weekend? How do they get A&M and Texas on the? How does that happen? Like, does there have to be like a mandatory level of separation between the two programs? Like one can use the airport only after the other's left?
I don't know, man. So anyway, that'll be a tough test coming up, but best of luck to women's tennis. But yes, back to men's golf and the General Hackler Invitational, which is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, starting on Sunday. James Hackler, World War II fighter pilot, went on to be a major general in the U.S. Air Force. He was also a longtime supporter of the event host, Coastal Carolina University, and the surrounding community around Myrtle Beach. So after he died, the Coastal Board of Trustees agreed to change the name of what was then Quail Creek Golf Club to the General James Hackler Golf Course at Coastal Carolina University, or GCU for short. That last part's not true, but the rest of it is. So he was quite the guy. World War II fighter pilot, rose up to be a major general, did a lot of good stuff in his community. They've named the golf course and now the golf tournament after him over at Coastal.
Glad you were able to clear your throat in the middle of that conversation. I am glad you brought us the information. We have learned so much on the podcast.
We have, and best of luck to the Chanticleers. I hope they finish second.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I'm sure that everybody will be looking forward to that and coming home maybe with some hardware for Mizzou. Let's see if the men can get that done over the course of the next weekend. I think that we have done everything. Brad has so thoroughly run us down of all the goings-on in and around town. I feel like the only thing we can say is goodbye.
My fellow Hackler, it's been a pleasure.
Bless you, sir. Bless you indeed. Thanks as well to Andrew Bristow, who does a great job producing for us and puts up with our shenanigans for them. I'm Matt Michaels. We will talk to you next time here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.